So we went over there, and this guy put a 110 to 240 transformer in a PlayStation 1 and put it all right back inside, and I still have that. It still works.
Oh, wow.
It's been 20, 30 years, and that thing still works. So that was my first culture shock, was burning up a PlayStation on the wrong power in a hotel, you know?
This is Hard Parking, brought to you by Right Honda, Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Jhae Pfenning, recording from my home studio here in Gilbert, Arizona. Coming up on today's show, I traveled to Ravi Tomerlin's We Don't Lift shop in Phoenix. He has just recently relocated from his original Tempe location. Technically, this might still be Tempe. I'm not entirely sure. One thing we know about Ravi is he does race cars. He does have a shop, but we dig into a little bit of his past to find out how it is he got to where he is today. You're not going to want to miss that. So that's coming up after this word from Arcus Foundry.
Business tech feeling whack? Too many tools, too much chaos, not enough time? Arcus Foundry is here to fix that. With SparkForge, you get a unified platform that connects everything you need. Your website, social media, phone systems, and more. There is no need for an expensive IT department or dealing with a bunch of separate systems. It truly is the all-in-one solution that saves you time and helps your business run smoother. Head over to arcusfoundry.com and use the code HARDPARKED to get your first month free. Upgrade your tech and get back to business.
Ravi Tomerlin, welcome back to Hard Parking. We are sitting here at your place. We Don't Lift. It's been a long time, new location. Welcome back.
Well, thanks. Appreciate having us back again.
Yeah, of course. I think the last time we talked, it was about your Southwest Speed Festival.
Right.
So we can talk about that. Don't let me forget. But I met you. I've been wanting to know more about you because you're like, whoo, here we go.
Yeah, that's a memory test right there.
Because when I moved here in 2014, we met. Actually, you came out to like the first meet where Jay's in town. Jay's coming into town. And at that point, you had one and a half, maybe 2 or 2.5 NSXs.
Between 1 and 4.
Between 1 and 4, fair. What? So let's play this like a movie. Let's backtrack from that point. How did you get there? Because I think you were involved in an accident. At that time, you had walking assistance. I think you were walking around maybe with a walking stick or a cane.
Did you meet at one of Robert's Red Robin meets? Is that what it was?
No, it was Jay's coming to town.
Oh, where was it?
This guy. I think we went to Cornish Pasty Company or something.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad
ago.
Glad you got a sharp memory. I can't remember anything. So prior to that, I had a pretty nasty accident in 2009, which, that actually affected my memory. My short-term memory is pretty bad. So I've been doing cars since the early 2000s. I went through my drifting phase in the late 90s, early 2000s. I ended up going to college up at Emory-Riddle. And there was a car club up there, and I didn't have a car yet myself, so I hooked up with all the guys who had cool cars like 300ZXs and stuff like that. Man, we'd race airplanes back down to Phoenix, which was absolutely a terrible idea and very unlawful. But here we are, many years later, still alive. So I got a car while I was in college. It was my Silver Integra. I don't think you ever saw that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that car was another story, another day. But that Integra, I didn't know how to drive manual. I learned how to drive manual in it.
No kidding.
Got my first speeding ticket the first weekend I owned it for going 2 miles an hour over in Prescott.
That's bullshit.
Because I didn't know how to get into fifth gear, so I was in fourth gear, and it was just a giant mess for me. And that car, I got maybe 500 miles on it. I lost the head gasket going down the 17 right around Black Canyon Freeway exit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, it's right before Phoenix started.
Right by the pie place.
Yeah, exactly. And so I ended up going into town. There was a little parts store, and I bought a manual for a 92, 95 Civic because my friends told me that I could use that. This is before Google, this is early, so we didn't have GPS or cell phones that were worth a damn. I think I still had a brick. I had a Nokia brick still, something along those lines. Maybe I had an early Razor at that point. But I learned I did that head gasket on the side of the road in like 5 days. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
On a B series, and I'd never worked on a car other than.
No kidding.
I think I'd done a battery.
Sure.
That was the start of my.
It's more than a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I was broke, man. I got quotes, and I'm like, I don't have that kind of money, man. I came across from overseas with a couple $1,000. I didn't have much to get by, so the car was $3,000. I had like $2 or $3 grand left in my bank account. There was no way anybody was going to get $2 or $3 out of me to repair the car. So I spent probably like maybe $300 doing it myself. Luckily it wasn't too bad. I didn't even machine the head or anything. It was just the side of the road repair job, and then that car launched me into everything that has happened since then.
That'd have been pretty crazy if you could machine the head on the side of the road.
I mean, even just I call places. Again, this is where you don't have Google, so you're looking through phone books trying to find a machine shop that's within a reasonable distance to get to, and I just didn't have options, so I just changed the head gasket, slapped it on with new head bolts, new head gasket, and kind of crossed my fingers and hoped it worked, and it did work. It worked for probably another year and a half before I took that car apart for other reasons, because then I started modifying it and got out of control.
Now, were you living here in the Valley at the time?
I had a dorm up in Prescott.
Okay, so you were semi close-ish, I guess, but not really.
Yeah. I was up in Prescott at that time. This is still early 2000s, like 2003-ish roughly. I met a lot of guys from Arizona Honda tuners, AZHT. I don't know if you ever ran into that. It was kind of dying about the time you got here. But that for a long time was, when you used like bulletin boards, all that stuff, forums.
Yep.
That was the largest Honda forum in Arizona, and probably one of the larger ones out there. Like, it rivaled Honda Tech even as size and volume. And it was just a bunch of idiots having a great time on there. But it was super valuable. I missed forums because of the ability to archive stuff and have it all documented to what we thought would be eternity. But of course, PhotoBucket's shutting down, so most of those threads are dead now, and all the information's been lost. Which
God
really
bless
sucks.
PhotoBucket, man. That ruined a lot of shit for a lot of people.
Yeah, they brought a whole new way of archiving to us, and then they snatched it away too.
Yeah,
I get it. That's just how things work sometimes. But so Honda Tech, Arizona HT, I started going to all the meets with them. Just met tons and tons of people through that group. Got into the car scene quite heavily, and it just spiraled out of control. I started dumping unnecessary amounts of money into that silver Integra. At some point, it made 500 horsepower on a Integra Type R engine, C5, all authentic Mugen body parts on it. Really nice, clean car. If you go on the internet and search real hard, you'll find pictures of it. But it hasn't been that. I think that car ceased to exist essentially in, I'd say roughly 2011. That car ceased to exist. It got impounded, for lack of any other explanation of that. I went through a nasty court case over a transmission that the cops thought was stolen, but was not. Ended up getting the car back on a pallet with my chargers being dropped. But the car was completely destroyed, so turned into a race car after that. By then, I'd already moved on. I had my RX-7. I had a couple Skylines by then. I had a Supra. I had an M5. I had just purchased my new NSX right around that time. The NSX came out of my RX-7 when my RX-7 was T-boned on Thanksgiving in 2009. I was hit pretty hard enough to knock my lights out for, I think that was a 2 or 3 minute lights out scenario.
Now let's hold on to that point.
Sure.
So you went from literally nothing to doing the head gasket on the side of the road to, what did you have?
I started early 2000s. I was importing lots of Japanese vehicles because I learned how to do that. So
sure,
I was making side cash that way because, I was working for like $6 an hour at O'Reilly's.
Right.
I needed side cash, so I figured out how to do importation of vehicles when it was easy still, before the current rule sets that are out there. So I had bought a couple Skylines in. I looked for just weird cars. I was trying to find what kind of car really spoke to me. So again, Skylines, Supras, all Subarus. Like I said, a 2000 M5, which is that fun V10 one. I really liked that car, except it smelled of leather really badly. So I actually traded it straight across for my FDRX7. And I just kept trying to find the car that seemed to fit me after the Integra was gone, because I really wasn't sure what was the. I was still in that point where I wasn't sure what I liked in a car and what made me interested in it. And so the RX-7 was really probably my biggest launch into cars publicly, because the RX-7, I was producing like V-mounts and some upgrades for it that people wanted, that I'd done in a manner that were quite affordable, as opposed to these big extravagant kits that weren't any more effective than what I was building.
How'd you get started with those?
Kind of the same way everything in my life has. I did it for myself first, and somebody's like, hey, dude, I want one of those. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to pay for it? And I just started building them, and I did that for 2 or 3 years. I was mainly just doing V-mount kits for that would utilize a factory radiator, a very lightly modified factory radiator, and it was actually utilizing a 2005 STI intercoolers, really small top mounts flipped upside down, but they're remarkably efficient little intercoolers. That they're very high quality cores. So I made 430 at the wheel on my RX-7 on like 13 pounds on a aftermarket set of twins, which is pretty low boost pressure for that power on a stock ported car. So people like that, and I rebuilt a few FDs for people, and kind of casually was assisting that community with help with those cars. For the most part, kind of when I get into something, I kind of OCD my way to a very deep level most of the time, and that usually results in a lot of progression in whatever I'm working on quite quickly.
We're going to play it back even further. Your Integra breaks down, don't have a lot of money, because at that point, you didn't, wherever you came from, you only came with a few $1,000s. Where was that from? Like, where are your early beginnings? Where's Ravi from?
So my family, my dad was into banking, so we moved around a ton. And again, so I'm born 85. Oop, dated myself. Shit. So I think from roughly 1990 to 94, I lived in Egypt.
Okay.
I grew up a lot in Egypt. I spent some time there. Then I came back to Arizona. I was in Glendale for, I think.
How old were you at the time?
I was in
5, 10?
First, second grade.
Yeah.
Third grade, still
you said 85,
young,
right?
Yeah, 85. So probably first, second grade, I think.
Damn, you're young.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, my gray's on the back, though.
Yeah.
And then we left. Desert Storm happened, so anybody who was expatriate was like exiting that area in a rush. So we actually, I vaguely remember like when we left. I remember that we didn't really like do like a moving van and stuff. You didn't pack all the stuff into the big vans and it all shipped away and you got it on the other end. It didn't occur to me until probably maybe 10 or 15 years ago that we didn't pack up the house and leave. We just grabbed stuff and left.
Like a movie.
I had my little stuffed animal, my Game Boy, and a backpack, and that's all I left with. We had suitcases. Obviously,
why would you need more than that?
Yeah, right. That's the essentials. The dire essentials. It was before the color Game Boy. We didn't have the good stuff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it didn't even occur to me that we didn't really pack up the house or anything. We just packed what would fit in suitcases, and everything else was sold or left there. Then we came back to Glendale. We lived down in Glendale. I think I was there till 6th grade, I want to say, roughly, which was interesting because you're moving.
So it's Glendale, Arizona, then.
Yeah, Glendale, Arizona. So just over by on Union Hills, and 67th and Union Hills, I want to say, Arrowhead. So I was there, getting into middle school, basically end of elementary, beginning of middle school, and then that's when things really kind of went different for me. So my dad was doing really well in the banking industry. So up until this moment, we were kind of, we weren't broke, but we were definitely like, lower income family, cheap car. We had a, old two-door.
Lower middle class?
Lower middle. Yeah, we had an old like two-door Accord for a 4-person family that we all crammed into that, if I recall, didn't have air conditioning either. So we came back, and my dad's promotions, we now had a 93 Accord. So
nice.
Fancy 93 Accord. And this is like 96, 97. So that was a pretty big, move for him, and we're excited.
Certified pre-owned right there, man.
Yes. Yeah. Nice quality. That light green color one, 4-door, LX trim, tan interior, beautiful car. So that was air conditioning, so that was pretty cool.
Pretty important in this
Very
state.
important in Arizona, but we didn't stay here that long. We actually left in, I want to say, I think we left in 97 or early 98. We went to Singapore, and Singapore is where I went all the way through high school. And that was the biggest culture shock you can possibly imagine.
How so?
Well, Egypt, it would have been a culture shock if I was that age too, but obviously I was young, so I had nothing really.
Yeah. It is what it is when you're young.
I didn't think about that. I was walking down the streets with a bunch of goats. Like that was just normal to me. It didn't occur to me that was not a normal thing to do.
Right.
You don't walk to school with a herd of goats around you with some guy waving an AK going hi and just walks his way. Goes the other way. It didn't occur to me that was abnormal. But now I'm old enough to see that I've lived in the U.S. for a while, and then I've gone back overseas and seeing the biggest culture shock initially was when I moved there. We actually stopped in this was Hong Kong. Yeah, we were in Hong Kong for a couple days. We stayed, I think.
What took you guys to Singapore?
Just Dad's job again. Yeah, I worked for a company called Group One, and Group One had a pretty good headquarters out there. So they were moving the whole family out there, and he was working out of there for the Southeast. At this point, he was doing a regional. He was a regional manager for the entire Southeast Asia area. So he was doing quite well in that sense. But yeah, we stopped in Hong Kong, and the first thing I remember is plugging in my PlayStation 1, which is my big present I got maybe 2 years earlier. Like, PlayStation 1, it's cool, you know. Still, it's the most expensive thing I've ever had in my family. We've never had consoles. We always, we had never had any of that stuff. We never had a Nintendo or Super NES. So PlayStation 1 was the first point we got to having something fancy and expensive to us. We plugged that puppy into the wall. I was playing my games, and then all of a sudden it smelled really freaking bad.
What games?
Gran Turismo.
Of course. I mean, I was going to say Gran Turismo, but you never know.
I had Gran Turismo 1 and Final Fantasy 7.
Okay.
In Final Fantasy 7, it was still above my pay grade of understanding what was going on there.
Oh yeah, that's not for
that was a difficult. But yeah, anyway, plugged it in, and it caught on fire because they used 220 over there.
Oh yeah.
And none of us had any remembrance that was a thing. So my brand new PlayStation just smoldered. So my dad, in his infinite kindness and desire,
sorry for your loss.
Yeah, well, my dad knows people that, because he's been traveling, and he knew some guy who knew a guy who said, you go down this alley and down at the end on the right, there's the guy there, and he'll fix it. So we went over there, and this guy put a 110 to 240 transformer in a PlayStation 1 and put it all right back inside, and I still have that. It still works.
Oh, wow.
It's been 30 years, and that thing still works. So that was my first culture shock, was burning up a PlayStation on the wrong power in a hotel, and all the I just remember getting on the trains and walking all over the place, and all these people that I didn't speak a language I understood, and watching my dad and this other guy go, talk to people and try to figure out where we're going, and finally ending up at this little, 10-foot by 10-foot stall in the middle of downtown Hong Kong to replace a transformer for a PlayStation. That was a strange thought to, remember, hold on to. Out of all the things I've forgotten, that's one of the ones I've remembered,
What did you guys get around in?
Because
you better remember that shit. I mean, we're sitting in a shop that works on cars.
Yeah. So when we got to Singapore, Singapore is a country that doesn't really do a lot of car stuff. It's a very small island. It's like 40 square miles, the whole country. So cars there's huge road taxes on vehicles. It's very expensive to own one. So I believe this is in 99 again. We had a 1991, I want to say, Corolla. It's either a Camry or a Corolla. I can't remember exactly which one. It was a greenish color. I believe my dad said we paid something like $45,000 for it, which
probably
is
Camry?
Like 4 times its value, though, retail new.
Yeah.
Because that's just how expensive they were. We kept it for 2 years. I think it was just 2 years, and then we sold it. There was no point of owning it in Singapore. They have incredible mass transportation there. Cabs, the buses, the trains. Cost you like $1 US to go from one side of the island to the other via train, and it would take 30 minutes.
It's crazy, right?
It makes like like New York or Chicago or even Japan's public transit look absolutely silly. It's incredibly ruthlessly efficient. It's always on time. It's very clean. The laws over there are super strict about littering and stuff. So very clean. You never sat in gum or anything like that. So yeah, as a kid, I had freedom. I was 13 years old. And I could literally go do whatever I wanted because you're in this incredibly clean, safe country. So it's kind of weird to think about it that I really did grow up alone from, like I said, right around 6th grade and up. 7th grade, I was functionally alone. I mean, I would, if I wanted to go downtown, I just got on my bicycle and rode downtown or jumped on the train and went downtown, come home at 1, 2 in the morning. Parents didn't really worry about this because this was a super normal thing over there. You do that in Phoenix, you might be dead already. You don't know what's happened.
Especially these days.
Yeah, it was dangerous. Even back then in Phoenix, you don't go down to Phoenix at 11 o'clock at night as a 13-year-old kid. You're going to get kidnapped. Something's going to happen. But out there, totally normal. We would go out in groups, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kids, and we just go out there and roll around and go play video games at the LAN parlors and stuff like that. And back then everybody was into weird colored hair, so everybody was getting their hair dyed and just crazy shit. But nothing to do with cars back then. It was other than Gran Turismo, which was just more of I had it. Wasn't really an interest yet. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a thing that really formatively affected me in any way. I never connected Gran Turismo and cars.
No kidding.
Yeah, that connection came way after I got into cars.
So you're a pretty engaging person, easy to talk to. With all your moving around, was it easy to find friends, or you just didn't want to fuck with them, or?
I came into, so a lot of my ease of communication now has come into from that I was the awkward kid who didn't have friends when
You
I
still
grew up.
are a little awkward.
Thank
but
you. I appreciate
so am
that.
I.
Well, I attract awkward friends like
Yeah,
yourself.
absolutely.
Yeah. No, I had a core group of like 3 or 4 friends, and most of us were like just video game nerds, and or we played in the band together. I was in like orchestra and played in the jazz ensembles, and I played like 7 different instruments.
Well, okay.
So I was the one who sat on the stairs all the time during lunch. I didn't go into the cafeteria because, hilariously enough, my older sister would bully me because she was a senior and I was a freshman. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I didn't get any shielding. There was no family protection there. God bless her soul. She was not nice to me in high school, but that's kind of expected. She had to show off for her friends to keep her social circle. She was the butterfly one.
Sure.
But yeah, most of my social skills definitely came from trying to find out where I belonged, and I would make friends very easily with anybody who wanted to be friends. I didn't have any requirements to be friends. I didn't feel those walls where I needed to approve of you as who you are. I'm just friends with anybody, the weird kids, the nerdy kids, the band kids, the jocks, whoever. It didn't matter. I was friends with everybody.
You're still that way now.
Yeah, for the most part.
For the most part. I mean, the adult version.
I'm agreeable with anybody until they do something really stupid. Everybody gets friendship first. If they decide that they don't deserve it and let me know, then I can help them with that.
All right, so now we go back to the RX-7.
Sure.
What happened that night or that day?
RX-7, Thanksgiving, 2009. I remember very distinctly. I was going to. This is actually, I would take that back. I don't actually exactly remember this 100% with clarity, because I thought I was going to the store to get a stick of butter, but I've been since told that it was actually a can of beans I was going to go get at the store. I was going to go get something for Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. I had 2 options. My motorcycle, which was my CBR, was sitting in front of my RX-7, and I had the RX-7 to go to the store. And I was thinking about taking the bike, but I luckily the motorcycle's battery was dead, so I didn't take the bike, and I jumped in the RX-7, drove out of my neighborhood about 1/8 mile away. I was sitting waiting to make a left-hand turn, and then all I remember, I was in the ambulance for the most part.
Jeez.
I was sitting at the light waiting to make a turn. Somebody ran through a light and T-boned me at roughly 50 miles an hour, 50 to 55 miles an hour.
Passenger side?
They hit me on the passenger side.
Thank God.
There's some pretty great photos on my Facebook of the passenger side door.
I see you post them every once in a while. It's kind of a remembrance
it's a reminder of how close you can get sometimes, because that door was almost touching, the passenger door was almost touching the driver's side door. And I was in this little like triangular shaped cocoon.
Yeah.
Somehow the door didn't hit my leg. I had a slightly fractured cheekbone from my face hitting the dash. The dash is at a 90-degree angle. You can see it. You can see the smear of my face on the dash, like the mark. I remember when I kind of came to, didn't know where I was. I was very dazed. I remember seeing some orange out of the right side of my peripheral. I remember turning the engine off because it was still running. The car was still running, hilariously enough. And I was thinking in my head, I can't move my neck or all. I'm all rigid up now, and I'm thinking, oh man, I hope it's not too bad. I wonder how bad it is. And at this point, I still can't see anything except in front of me and a little bit out of peripheral. And then as I'm sitting there thinking about what is this orange, and I'm like, there's no orange on my car. And then I remember my coilovers are orange. So what I was seeing was the back right coilover sitting by my right shoulder.
Wow.
And then I had realized and processed that it was a very hard hit. I remember someone coming up, apparently an off-duty nurse came up and was in the window, and she got my phone number out of me for the house. And I remembered my mom's phone number, and then that's it. I don't remember anything till I was almost into the hospital after that. But she had called my mother. My mother came down because she was, 1/8 mile away too. And that's all I remember from that scenario. And then I remember in the ambo waking up, I could vaguely see people above me. And I remember they had one of my arms strapped down and they had the other one still loose, which I thought was kind of weird, in retrospect. But I remember just taking my one arm and reaching over and grabbing this giant chunk of glass out of my right arm and pulling it up and just looking at it. And then I see the nurse freak out, or the EMT freak out, like, what are you doing? And they're like patching this hole on my arm and strapping me all the way down. And I passed out again. And just, I get to the hospital, and I remember my x-ray tech knew me by name. And at first that doesn't seem it wasn't Mr. Tomerlin, though. It was Ravi. And I'm like, holy crap. I didn't realize it was this darker complexion person with like blonde hair. But about maybe 2 weeks later, I found out that was actually my light-skinned person with blonde hair who worked at that hospital named Annie, who was actually part of AZHT at the time. So she recognized me coming into that into that storm of chaos. And then I don't remember much after that. And then I don't remember really any of the discharge process or being in a hospital room or anything. I don't remember any of that.
How long?
Less than a day. Other than a fractured.
So you got really lucky then.
Got really lucky. Fractured cheekbone, a lot of muscular trauma from the whiplash, and I still got some scars on my arm for where that. You know the little rod that comes out of a door to hold the door open, the little black rod. Yeah, that went right through my muscle from one side of my arm to the other. So I got a nice scar on each side of my arm there. But yeah, I remember going to Applebee's. Maybe the next day. Maybe I think it was Friday then. At this point, my good friend Josh was checking on me at some point. He's another one of the AZHT guys. That Saturday and Sunday was a NASA event. Somehow, I convinced Josh to take me to the racetrack that Saturday. And I was at the racetrack during the weekend. I did someone's timing belt, high as crap on whatever drugs they had me on. Anthony Lisa, he won the race. And I can't believe I don't think he knew I was high. Apparently I went like in my pajamas, so I don't know why anybody would trust me to do mechanical work in my pajamas.
That's a G over there. See that guy in his pajamas? Like, he knows what's up. Like,
Anthony Lisa had me do a timing belt on his B16 and his Civic at Phoenix International Raceway. I don't know how I got home. No idea. I don't remember any of the ride. And that
were you into the whole NASA scene and car and racing and stuff at the time?
At that point, yeah, I was driving my. What was I? Well, I was driving the ARC. I'd driven the ARC-7 on track. I'd driven the Integra on track by that point. My Skyline had been on track by that point. I think I might have been working tech at that point because I went through a lot of different jobs with that group. But yeah, and then there's a giant blank in my memory from that day to when I remember anything. Like the next thing I can remember maybe was, parking my black NSX at my O'Reilly's workplace. So I'm all healed at this point. That's probably 8 months later. I don't have a lot of memory in between there. Like getting the NSX was done on I bought my first NSX high as shit on drugs. I had no idea I bought it until I had it, and it just arrived.
This was 2010 at this point?
I think that was December 2009. I think I moved pretty quick.
Still 2009. Okay.
Yeah, I moved pretty quick. As soon as it was within a month and a half of the accident, I went and bought that NSX.
Why the NSX?
Because I hadn't had one yet. I had all those other Japanese great cars. I don't know when this occurred, but I do remember at some point I borrowed a friend Jeremy Ward's S2000, drove it around for a day or two to see if I liked it, and then a friend Simi Sandu. You might know Simi. Maybe.
I know the name.
Yeah, I drove
He's
his.
He's 2000 guy, right?
Yeah, I drove his.
Is he here or did he move away?
He moved out, I think. Yeah,
a while ago, maybe, right?
10 years ago.
Do you have like a blue one or a white one? You don't remember? Yeah, yeah.
But I drove. He had an AP2.
That wasn't a dig at the memory. I just
Yeah, no. That's what I remember. He had an AP2 and Jeremy had an AP1. I drove them both.
Simi, I can't remember.
Yeah, I drove them both, and I decided that I didn't like how they drove on the street. It wasn't my car for the street. So then I shotgunned the NSX based on not liking the S2000 because I just had a bigger engine, had longer gears, didn't rev as high. I felt it'd be a better street car for the torque, and I never test drove one because no one would let you test drive one back.
Right.
Yeah, no one was just lending their keys out to their NSXs back then. So, yeah, I bought it sight unseen, had I think 65,000 miles on it. They reported one scratch on the fender. I had a check engine light on. Yeah, just bought it. It arrived. And all of a sudden, I remember it being at O'Reilly's.
Every time somebody mentions Skylines, especially R32s, I always think about you.
So I never
because you have some opinions on Skylines, and you've driven them. R32s, 33s.
34s. I never fell in love with the car. It's one of those cars that, like the RX-7 and the NSX, to me, they're so bespoke and so unique, and they have almost like a soul to them. They feel like they have more going for them that's on the surface. Where the Skyline always felt like a very glorified S chassis to me, and the interiors were not very bespoke. They weren't special. The base model versus the GTR was not incredibly different, and they're really heavy. And from the factory, they're very, very slow. In comparison.
Yeah.
They were not the fastest things by any means, factory-wise. Now, obviously, you can throw money at anything.
Yeah,
and
you can make
fast.
Them. Yeah,
make
totally.
a Paseo fast if you want to. So
I don't know about a Paseo.
I've seen a 2JZ swap Paseo in Phoenix.
All right, 2JZ swap. Okay,
that was nuts.
To your point, you can make it fast.
Yeah, anything with money you can make fast. So I kind of always liked for the most part with cars, I like to get to know them when they're in like an OEM or stockish format.
First.
And as I've gotten older, I've even appreciated those cars more and more. I've appreciated cars in OEM format because let's be honest, most of the time when we mess with cars, we make them way worse than the original target goal for the car, So you can make it faster, but it doesn't make it a better car.
There's a compromise.
Yeah, at some point, like my race car, it's a very fast race car, terrible street car. I hate driving that thing on the street. Everything about it is awful for the street. But you put it on a nice smooth race
it's your
track.
legit.
Yeah, it is a race car. I purpose
Yeah.
built it for that, so there was no expectation of anything but that. But yeah, like my white NSX, it's stock, and I like it that way. It's wonderful. It drives great. The only thing I have a problem with is now is extreme anxiety of somebody hitting it. You know.
Sure.
Outside of that, it's a pleasurable vehicle to own. You know, it's got 249,000 miles on it now. I've done all the T-belts on it, and outside of that, it's pretty much how it came, you know.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, on all that stuff. Let's talk about We Don't Lift a little bit. Let's talk about Southwest Speed Festival.
Well, We Don't Lift still here. You know, this is year 10 technically, as we've started year 10 on it. 2015, early 2015 is when I came up with the idea.
It's a long time.
It is a long time. And it went by really incredibly fast through a lot of ups and downs. It was generated obviously due to my unemployment that I had in 2013 is when I kind of started this whole gig, and I never thought it would be a company. Like I thought it would just be an end to a means. You know, found another job and moved on with life, and it'd just be a side hustle. But now it's turned into a fairly large facility that does a fairly large volume of dollar amount with just retail alone, plus the service work we do in the back. It keeps expanding into new avenues. Like we're now doing a lot of Formula Car work here, which is kind of new to us. We have anywhere between 3 and 5 employees at any given time, part-time or full-time. Most of the vendors that I work with, they recognize us as one of their top dealers for the Southwest region, if not sometimes in just general. We're considered a small volume dealer because we don't buy millions at once, but we do millions in terms of volume over the course of a year. So it's pretty interesting to see where it's gone. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I've started taking more of a backseat role. The other owners kind of doing the same thing. We're kind of just pulling back and trying to enjoy it as a company and trying to put people in place to run it for us as opposed to being such an active hands-on thing. It's gotten to a point where people don't have to come in and see me now. People come in and they'll talk to my other employees, which has been a big chase for years, is trying to chase myself away from the counter so I could go work on other stuff. So, yeah, it's wonderful to see where it's gone. I think 10 years is a long time for anything, though, to do any one thing. So I think I've come to my point in life where I'd like to take a pivot and work on other stuff.
What else do you have going on?
Southwest Speed Fest, we've talked about a little bit. That's not really an income source for me. It's more of a community project to a degree. Because like I said, my goal is we have a lot of really cool events like Fuel Fest and the Go Fast stuff. And there's lots of other cool events that happen in Phoenix, but none of them are really motorsports centric.
Sure, right.
They're all either show centric or drift centric specifically, or culture centric. Which all of these things are great things, and none of them on their by themselves is a bad thing in any way whatsoever. But I wanted something in Arizona that got all of that in one spot, in one house. And no one's really doing that. So we came up with that Southwest Fest we talked about, I think about 2 years ago is when we first talked about it. And it finally happened last year in September.
Right.
On a very lucky 90-degree day instead of a 110-degree day. And
it was a great event.
Yeah, from everything we've seen on any metrics measured, it was a very successful event. We had triple the amount of people we expected show up. The event itself was sold out. The entire paddock was full. There was no extra place.
Right.
Podium Club had to make another parking lot during the event to accommodate everyone, which was kudos for them to recognize that we had to make an adjustment quickly. We had lots of food vendors. We had music. We had alcohol, which is always a tough thing to get figured out. And all the feedback was like, hey, when's the next one? When are we doing this again? How can we make this better, bigger, So I'm already in talks with sponsors trying to get more people to sign on. We're very close to hopefully announcing dates, and we know it's going to be in Q1 of next year, so early, so cool dates, sub 90-degree dates. It's going to be a 2-day event instead of a 1-day event, so we know some basic details. We expect there to be more live music. We expect it to be a slightly shorter day, but 2 of them. We are really trying to have some wheel-to-wheel racing pop up via hopefully either a local racing chapter and or the Podium Club's racing series itself, which will most likely be open wheel, which we have a ton of open wheel cars out here, but nobody knows about them. So we're pretty excited to offer that to the public. We're going to bring drifting back, of course, with more. Well, we had 30 drifters last year. We're going to try to get that up to 50 this year. couple more lights, make it a little more visible out there. Hopefully add some spectator areas.
Because this was a multi-day event, too.
So last year was technically one long 15-hour day followed by like a 7-hour day the next day, plus a practice day. The format was elongated the way it was, predominantly because we had a whole bunch of unknowns we were working for. We didn't know how the drifting was going to work at that track. So we needed to have some off-screen time testing. So we did a lot of drifting in the morning just to kind of see how it went. And then we also didn't have, I out of my personal bank account came that event. So I was only risking as much as I could possibly afford. And the big risk was actually the lights. The lights were a substantial portion of that budget, many, many thousands of dollars. People don't realize how much lights cost to rent. And when you're talking about renting 20 of them, plus all the fuel to fuel them, that was the largest single expenditure we had for that event was lighting the racetrack. So I did not want to light it for 2 days in a row. So I wanted to light it for the very minimal amount of time, hence the elongated 1 day format that we ran. This year we're spreading that out to a 2 day format that will probably be lights Friday and Saturday. Sunday would be a daytime only event.
So you're still planning on doing 25 or you're thinking 26?
We are doing 26. Yeah, we are skipping 25 mainly for the dates issue because it's so incredibly hard to work with summer dates to maybe get what you want. Whereas if we push it to Q1, skip this year, it gives us the time to breathe because I actually came out of that whole event with a pretty nasty case of carpal tunnel. For several months, I could not type on my computer because I was working my regular 8 hours of desk work plus another 2 to 3 hours per day of desk work, and my whole wrist and arm and shoulder were just done. So we needed a break. The other two guys, Chris and Avery, same thing. We needed a break. Plus, we wanted to talk with the community and kind of get a better pulse of what we wanted to change and how we wanted to make additions and just give us more time to do it right, as opposed to rush out a product. We just didn't want to rush out a product and have it fail.
So we'll be looking forward to that and that announcement. A lot of old cars around here.
Yeah.
Anything newish that you like?
Yeah, we still kind of stick to our old.
Like money not a problem. I'm not asking, what's your dream car, but is there anything out there where you're like, well, that'd be kind of cool to have?
Well, I just bought a Cayman recently, and that was definitely.
I guess that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was like
that's the one right out there.
Yeah, the white one out front. That was I haven't bought I've never owned a car from the same decade ever. I've never, and technically that one's not from this decade either. It's last decade, but I've never bought a car within like a 15-year-old span of time. They've always been significantly older. For financial reasons, I didn't have the money, and B, I'm also a person who doesn't really like to pay for depreciation. I don't like to be the guy who buys it and loses 20 grand in value immediately.
At least.
Yeah. So I was looking for something to replace the NSX and also my Subaru. I love my Subaru 2.5, but I get 40, getting tired of driving a manual in traffic every day. So I wanted something that had some flexibility, but was really fun to drive still. So we get a lot of P cars here in the shop. A lot of Porsches come by for a track setup and that type of work. So I've driven a lot of Caymans at this point because it's a really well-known car for being very good at being a track car as opposed to the 911, which is a little bit dramatic for a lot of folks, and the price tag's pretty rough on them too.
Sure.
So after driving, dozens of these Caymans around, I really started looking for a Cayman pretty actively. I wanted a 09 to 2012 specifically because I wanted the facelifted 987, but I wanted the PDK, not the automatic, because the Tiptronic automatic is god-awful. I drove a couple of those. They're uninspired, sloppy.
I've heard. Don't
feel good at all. And like I said, I was trying to avoid a manual. So you're 10 or 15 grand for one of those cars, or, in the 30s for the PDK ones from the 9 to 12. I didn't want a 13 plus because I went to direct injection. I didn't want to deal with all the DI issues and maintenance issues. A little bit more horsepower on those engines, but again, this one's, I think, 270 and 240 foot-pound, like that, 3,000-pound car. If it sounds very familiar to another car I own.
It's very, very first-gen NSX there.
It's very first-gen NSX. It's a touch faster in a straight line. It's a 5-second car, not a 5.2, 5.3 car. But amazing AC system. The ride quality is untouchable. It has that huge front trunk plus the back trunk. There's storage compartments everywhere. I get 24 average miles to the gallon, which is better than my Subaru 2.5 with 113 horsepower at the wheel, And cruising on the highway, I'll touch 32, 33 all day long. So it's economical to that degree. It's very much a typical Civic or Accord levels of economy to a large degree, but it's sporty. Pop it in the little manual mode and flap through the PDK real quick, and it's crisp. I made sure I had the Sport Plus modes on it, which, again, change how the transmission shifts and how the throttle responds and all that. There's tons of options on P cars if you've ever looked into them. So when I bought it, I was running VIN numbers trying to find one that was just loaded to the hilt with options, so I didn't have to pay for them, But yeah, it's been a really good car. I'd say I don't think for under 40 grand you're going to find a better car that's a sports car type feel car that's pretty reliable, solid numbers on all metrics. That car is just one of the highest rated cars you can find out there.
Why not get a Miata?
Why not get a Miata? Because I don't want an automatic Miata to start with. That sounds awful. As great as those Miatas are to drive, like the NDs, they're slow.
Yeah.
They're uninspired in a straight line. And to me, go anything less than an NSX in terms of power to weight ratio is just a step backwards in terms of
It's hard, right? It's
hard.
Yeah.
Like that's why the Subaru 2.5, it's they're rated like 170 flywheel. They do like 115, 120 wheel usually. The only reason that one got me by is it's 2,500 pounds, so it got through its power really well. It was it felt light, and then it had other advantages like all-wheel drive. So I took it camping and all sorts of other stuff, outside of the norm. But I have my pickup for that too. So I'm not. It's just a duplicate vehicle at this point.
How many cars do you have?
Oh man. NSX, Civic, Subaru, Cayman.
We know you have a pickup truck.
What am I forgetting? Oh, 2 motorcycles.
2 bikes.
2 bikes.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think that puts it as eight actual vehicles, plus the camper, plus the trailer.
Well, Ravi, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, it was fun, man. Sit back, catch up. We just got to talk about you one time.
At some point, maybe we will.
We need to flip the roles, maybe.
I'll give you 2 questions right now.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, man. On the spot.
Give you 5 seconds.
Shit. What got Jay into cars?
Oh, God.
Ha! Gotcha.
Next question.
Oh, no
like most people, right? You just, I think, gravitating to stuff like that is just natural. You just grab stuff and you like what you like. I don't think there was any one specific thing. I could always think about the specific thing that, the first time I saw an NSX and I became obsessed.
Yeah, that was.
We usually don't forget that. But just cars in general, I've just always liked anything that moved.
Question 2. So you are definitely what I consider like an ambassador to automotive enthusiasts and to the NSX Club specifically. Like most people, if they have any concerns with NSX Club or anything they want to bring up, they talk to you because you're a good entry point and you're, again, personable, and again, you're an ambassador to the whole group. Is that a role that you desire and crave in your life,
No.
or is that something that just fell upon you?
Kind of fell upon me.
Well, what do you think about it?
As the current club president, it's not something I wanted to do. Sure. I was asked to run. When I stepped in as the kind of the vice president, that was kind of the expectation. Mm-hmm. And so I basically got told to run for president.
Sure.
I try to play stuff so much down the middle in just about everything I do. We kind of briefly talked about that earlier.
Yeah, moderation is always a smart way to move.
The I wouldn't say public perception, but I would say maybe the public perception of people within the NSX community, for those that know about the club, it wasn't always the best. Sure. You have your diehard people who love the club, who've been members for 20 years or so. You have people that maybe were in the club at one point, had no value and got out. Maybe you think it's the cool people's club. Maybe you think it's this. Maybe you think it's that. So I said, if I'm going to do this, we're going to make some major changes.
Right.
And it's going to take the power of everyone. And I need everyone to be on board before we tell the membership base and other people out there that are on the outside looking in that these are things we're going to do. We need to commit to them.
Right.
And so that kind of became the responsibility, I guess, that I took on. And this is the second year in, and we're kind of behind on some things, which is understandable. We had a very aggressive timeline.
You have a very big plate on this too, though.
I kind of understand, and this isn't a knock at any of the previous presidents. I'm really good friends with one of them.
Yeah.
Peter, of course.
Yeah.
But you start looking around, and it's like, okay, now I know why things didn't really change. Sure. Because, as you know, running a business, it takes everyone, and you don't want to just look up and be the only one running. You turn around, everyone's just still standing there.
Yep.
People that were just ready to go, through the wall with you are just still standing there. And so that's been a big struggle. But we've been able to deliver a lot of things that people have been asking for years.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, but we have to just keep doing it.
Yeah, and I said consistency is, I think, where you'll get where you want to go. And I think with all types of clubs and organizations of this nature, having a consistent platform that you are moving in one consistent direction, where people can feel more confident about what they're involved in. I think that's just life in general. Like that's most people don't sign on to stuff that don't seem like will be consistent.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that whole thing is, we kind of joke, I call it the secret society of NSX owners, but, we had an email that got sent to the club back when I was filling vice president about the direction of the club and how they're worried about it. And, the former president's just putting all his friends in places, and it's just going to be more of this and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, well, there's people that weirdly might be rooting for you to fail. And so I kind of took that on as a challenge.
Sure.
Because, me and Peter Cunningham are really good friends.
Yes, totally.
But as people know, I'm taking the club in different directions.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's on me to make it work.
That's the interesting perspective that you have, too. So like I said, you are, like I said, as an ambassador for the community is what I was kind of getting at. I feel like you have a much better pulse on the community than prior generations have, in that sense that I think...
Yeah.
I've seen more movement because I'm actually on the outside of the NSX club. I don't participate very regularly, and you know that. I pop in every couple years, show my face, and disappear.
But you pay attention. That's
I do pay attention. I always watch from the outside in,
Yep.
And I like to. And I'm probably one of those folks that if things start going a direction that's interesting to me and intriguing to me, I'll probably get more involved again. And that's not like that's not what I would call like a threat to how people operate with this. I think that a lot of people are like myself, where we just sit on the outside and we can't find the value in the active participation role.
Right.
A lot of people do sign up for their NSXCA membership purely for NS Expo, and that's
100%.
it. And that's I think kind of what you're trying to fix. Actually, is what I've kind of viewed that you're trying to add some value to the club for the rest of the year.
Yep.
Because that's I think that's where we have this disconnect between folks like myself who are more on the track side and the performance enthusiasts and who just appreciate the platform for the performance side, and the folks who appreciate it for the collector's value and the technical aspects of it.
Yeah.
Because I've always felt often when I visit NSX meets in general, there is very much a divide between the two groups. And it's not like they don't like each other, it's just that they don't have any commonalities. What's that?
It's just a different interest other than the car itself.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the car is bringing us together as an interest group, but we don't have a lot of commonalities with the club itself bringing us together. So it'd be really cool to see some more work towards that direction of where we all come together for different reasons than other just performance or just the value of the vehicle.
Yeah. So we've talked about building a track centric section of the club, and it's just going back to what I said a few minutes ago, everyone's ready to get moving on all this stuff.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you're wearing all these different hats. So, that's just part of the grind.
Right.
And I told everyone, hey, we're going to be working hard as hell at first, but we're going to look back and just be in a maintenance. But we have to work hard right now to get to where we need to be.
Oh, it takes a ton of energy to get the ball rolling. Once it's rolling,
my biggest fear is that we put in all this work, and then when I am no longer the president, it just falls off.
Right, the legacy stops.
Yeah,
that's something I work a lot with the SAE, Sun Devil Motorsports guys. All those FSE kids, same problem they run into is it's you can take any business and it's the same problem.
Yep.
It's whether or not you react to make changes or not, versus just staying the course and seeing if it withers or not. And then you have a lot more work.
Yeah,
so we're thankful to have you actually taking that initiative to make changes in the club.
That's your 2 questions.
There you go. We'll revisit this some other time with it fully flipped.
That's right. Absolutely. Thanks, Ravi.
Yeah, you got it, man. Thanks. Good seeing you again.
Hey, guys, I want to thank you for stopping by the podcast. If you like what you saw today, go ahead and hit that like button, hit subscribe, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. If you're streaming the audio, please consider subscribing and leaving a positive review. Believe it or not, that does help the algorithm tremendously. If you're in a position to help the podcast upgrade, please consider joining the Patreon, patreon.com, Hard Parking Podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus audio as well as Patreon exclusive swag and free show swag. Also, special thanks to the main show sponsors, Right Honda, Right Toyota, Toyota of Huntington Beach, Claremont Toyota, and Gardenia Honda, Arcus Foundry, Auto Cannon, officially licensed Honda and Acura gear. Your support makes all the difference in this show.
And if this is your first time checking this out, and if you truly enjoy this show, share it with the world, and I will talk to you all next week.
Now it's stripping time.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Shut up!